Hello, thank you for attending the Harrington Group International's conversation about the medical device industry adoption of PPAP for risk management, the why and how we're going to do that. We first presented this at an ASQ event in Boston and got a lot of good feedback from it. The deck's been updated with that information, and I think some of those folks are on today's call, so I just want to thank them for their feedback. One other thing, this is not a software demo, but some of the people registered asked if we could show some slides, which we'll do that as well. Basic webinar housekeeping, phones are muted. Use the questions block for answers, and a copy of the presentation can be downloaded during this event. Also, for those looking for certification points, you will automatically receive a certificate of participation. Why bother? Medical devices had a good amount of recalls from last year, and building a knowledge base from PPAP process engineering can improve the results and minimize the risk. The other thing about the medical device industry, it is changing. Most of you probably saw the announcement that the FDA plans to adopt ISO 13485 as its basis for quality systems. Again, big changes in trying to align with the global supply chain and what's going on in other industries. But PPAP is not new to the medical device industry. Back in 2015, AdvaMed published an entire document on the subject. And again, if you'd like a copy of that, happy to send it to you. One other just quick comment. I did have conversations last week with, the idea of PPAP and risk management and ISO 14971. I mean, 485 and 971 are related. But here's the point they're trying to make, that yes, they are different. And they're different between the two standards. It starts just with definitions. But the point I wanted to make on this slide and why I put it in is, the idea of a risk priority number or RPN might vary, but the FMEA process is important. And we're going to talk a little about the difference between the design FMEA, the DFEMA, and the process FMEA, the PFEMA, which gets messed up a lot. And the other thing that the person sharing his thoughts with me didn't understand that there was a change in the automotive standard that started this, where they now have the option of using the traditional risk priority number. The problem with that was, the suppliers got information like anything over 100 required an action item. So lo and behold, everything was, under 100. So they changed it with what they call an AP now, or an action priority number that says, look at all these risks need to be managed, but here's how you can prioritize them. So why PPAP? In the medical device industry, we've had the IQ, OQ, PQ process for quite some time. Are we installing it correctly? Is it operational? Are we getting the performance? And again, it was working quite a bit and quite well. The idea of user requirements, functional specs, design specs, but to be blunt, it's not the easiest thing to explain to people. And the idea of usable, readable, maintainable documents across your entire company is kind of important. And we're going to talk about how that can be simplified a little bit. The other one that comes up when other industries are looking at this, well, what about first article? We've been doing first article for a long time. Most common in aerospace, but some medical device people use it. And the problem with first article is it only proves you can make one acceptable product. It doesn't show that you can make two. But they're all trying to address the same thing, the same idea. So why PPAP? The PPAP process is looking at approval of the manufacturing process. And it's kind of straightforward. The steps are, this is how we make it. We call it a process flow. These are the process risks. We call that a PFMEA. And this is how we control the risk in a control plan. Now, as far as simplification, again, think back to the slide we just had up on IQ, OQ, PQ. We want to make it easy to go into any organization, and almost every company, and I don't mean quality professionals, but almost any company, manufacturing, the owners, the executives, they can take you from receiving to shipping. They can say, this is what we do, this is how it's done, this is how we make it. And most of them are aware of the risk along. Now, this Op 30 is critical, and we need to make sure we can do this. And then they usually go on and say, and that's why we put in this error proofing or foolproofing or vision system or something to control it. It just seems easier to explain to people. And as we get down into the supply chain, many of the small suppliers that are submitting to the medical device customers work across multiple industries. They're not a medical device supplier. They're stamping or an injection molder or a 3D printer or a composite manufacturer. And they're used to PPAP. So it should help the suppliers perform better. Now, this part is very important in just talking about the subject, and that is APQP versus PPAP, what I refer to as knowledge engineering. APQP, or Advanced Product Quality Planning, is product-driven review by design engineers. PPAP, the production part approval process, is process-driven by manufacturing or quality engineers. The reason I think this is important is because the user roles are very, very different. When I'm designing systems, I'm looking at potential design failures and their causes. And that usually is done in pretty sophisticated engineering tools, PLM tools, CAD/CAM tools, all the tools that engineering has in front of them. But when it comes to making parts or manufacturing, what we want to do in PPAP is focus on the potential process failures and the causes. And again, process failures and their causes. And in this area, about 80% of the people are using spreadsheets. Now, for those of you on the call that are not familiar with PPAP at all, there's usually 18 elements. Your customer might tweak this list. They might have 15, they might have 23, they might change the wording on it a little bit. But this is kind of the outline of what a PPAP process will look like. Again, your customers may have their own version of this. So how do they do that? Well, the automotive supply chain, who's, again, been doing this for a long time, I was shocked to hear that in 1 year they had 400 major audit findings and 6,000 minor audit findings on control plans. And it's like, well, how could that happen? They've been doing this forever. Well, it happens very easy because they're in spreadsheets. And they put something in the control plan and they didn't update the process schema, or they put something in the process. It was just a non-linked, non-integrated mess. And then the other area that spreadsheets use quite often is in MSA or measurement studies, where they're trying to see, does this device only accept good products and only reject bad products? So that's the area that a lot of the people, and I believe the medical industry is going to be wrestling with. Is there a better mousetrap? And, I have a lot of calls with people that are frustrated about, the boss or the executive or the company bought something or did something and told us to use this, and it doesn't work. So this slide basically is, without understanding what your people need, how the PPAP process works, whatever software you use will fail. People, process, software is the hierarchy. Well, when you go through that, it's, well, why do you do that? A lot of organizations buy something and throw it at the people doing the work with no requirements document. And I've seen the opposite, where there's requirement documents that are not realistic. They don't identify needs versus wants. So one caution is, don't let perfection get in the way of continuous improvement. And that's, well, we can't use it because it doesn't do this, and we can't do this because we're doing this. Remember, all you're trying to do is to take a baby step in replacing standalone, non-integrated spreadsheets. Now, the other thing that's important is who you're asking drives the needs and wants. And I put them into 3 buckets: people that oversee, people that manage, people that execute. And the oversee folks are basically the high level that might want some analytics or dashboards or see what's going on. But long story short, the higher you go up in the organization, if they're not hearing anything, they say it must be going well. Now, there's the second group, management. And they perceive APQP and PPAP as a project management task. Here's the task, you assign it to people, you sign things off, and you're done. And in most cases, that's not a problem. They don't hear any complaints about that. It's just project management. It's the third level, the knowledge engineering group, where you have to execute that. And that is where we hear a lot. Documenting this stuff in spreadsheets is a real time-consuming mess. So when we were working on this with various organizations, the users, if you ask them, the people executing are very straightforward. If it's too complicated, I'm going back to spreadsheets. Another comment we heard a lot is, I'm not trying to have the software do my job. I just want it to be my job easier. And that's where they're talking about sophisticated workflows and email notifications and on and on and on, which, again, from a project management standpoint, it makes sense. But from an execution where I'm trying to author this knowledge engineering, it's tough. And, the other one is, well, don't automatically do anything. Let me decide. And again, some of the tools, because they weren't designed or developed by practitioners, say, well, if the ECR came out and it went from Rev A to Rev B automatic, and they said, oh, please don't do that. I'm in the middle of trying to get this PPAP reviewed at the old revision. Let me decide. And, another one, but the PLM vendor said we could do this. Well, let's talk about PLM. When I was presenting a version of this a while back, I had a VP of quality come up to me from a large billion-dollar global company, and he said, John, we spent 5 years and $5 million trying to get these 3 different PLM apps launched for PPAP, and they all failed. And it wasn't until I heard this question that I understand why. And the why is PLM tools, engineering tools, are very rigid on purpose. But remember, they're doing product design. And product design is not the same as making parts. The roles are very different. Now, here's another one that comes up periodically, and some of the companies' software tools do this, but just be careful. They say, well, we want the software to automatically connect the design FEMA to the PFEMA. Well, the problem with that is, remember, we've got different groups with different purposes using different vocabulary. And the diagram up here is somehow they wanted the software to figure out common words and common things and smush it all down into PFEMA. And, maybe there's some AI things coming out that could figure this out right now, but right now it's a bad idea. And say, well, but other PLM, QMS soft companies do that. Yes, they do it, but not very well. And what I mean by that is ask the people that execute this process. Ask your suppliers. And then they'll come back and say, well, John, we took the training and they said the DFMEA and PFMA must work together. And that is true, by the way. That is absolutely true. But it should not be done automatically by software in order to try to, skip some steps or save some time. This is the only way I know how to do that. And that's with people, not software. Or you with your suppliers. And again, they go, but we already software, we have this stuff, we're project management, we're just, doing it in Excel, nobody's complaining. Well, all right, be careful. Simply uploading spreadsheets into a project management tool is a risk. Number one, I mentioned the audit findings, broken links between process flow, PFEMA control plans. But, again, if you start talking to the people that are trying to do this in Excel, oh man, I spent all weekend going through this. I got all done with it and I sorted it when it was merged and it got all messed up, cut and paste errors, even math errors. So the question is, risk management is a critical business process. Why are you doing it in Excel? And this is when I start talking to executives in the company. I mean, you don't do accounts payables, accounts receivable, inventory in Excel. Why would you do this in Excel? Why are we managing the risk in spreadsheets? And they'll come back and say, well, we have supplier portals and project management software to do this. And uploading Excel files is better than nothing. Well, no, it's not really. It puts you at risk. And let's just go into that a little more detail. The majority of the organizations that are viewing APQP and PPAP as project management put 80% of their effort on project management. And, if you miss a deadline, that's a bummer. And they don't put a lot of time into the knowledge engineering or document authoring of the process flow, PFEMA, the control plans, gauge studies, et cetera. Now, if you mess up there, that's where we get recalls. That's where we get a lot of money coming right out of the bottom line. And it changes. I'm hesitating on how to say this, but it's important that we understand that there's a better way to do this, and we need to give the people the tools to do it. One quick side note, in Boston, a guy came up to me at the end, a young man, and he shared something with me that I didn't think about, but he made the comment, and very intelligent, very capable, very nice person. He said, if they don't give me a better tool to do it, I'm leaving. I'm leaving the company. I'm not going to do this in spreadsheets. So, I never thought that doing spreadsheets and PPAP would impact employee turnover, but apparently it does. Now, again, as a benchmark for the industry that started this, the automotive OEMs back in late 2021 started mandating the use of software to ensure the linkage between these documents. So after decades of deployment, decades of building this knowledge in spreadsheets, and if that's who you're benchmarking, let's learn from them. My point is, you don't have to start where automotive was 30 years ago. Start where they're at today. And, I understand that organizations spent money on various software tools. I get it. And they say, well, we paid for an ERP app. Does it go in there? The PLM guy said it will go, or even the QMS software guy said it'll work. Well, the first thing I say is that's the wrong question. Ask your people about their process and then ask the question and look at the software. But again, they said, didn't we already buy an app for this? Because a lot of times the perception is that we have. In the ERP space, I had one senior executive come to me and say, our ERP software does all this. And I followed my own advice. I said, can I talk to the people in your company that are doing this? And they said, sure. So I gave them a call and talked to them. Guess what the answer was? Oh, we do it all in Excel and then we upload it into ERP. The point of telling you that story is the perception, the higher up in the organization was we already quote unquote do this in ERP, but it's not necessarily the truth. Go out and ask the people and find out what's going on. I'm advocating something better than spreadsheets, but not too complex. It doesn't, have to go into the highly engineered stuff. Quick side note on that. Most of the highly engineered tools start with first you do the DFMEA. And I think for a lot of the people on today's call, you don't have design authority. Some of you may, and we talked about that earlier. But for the people that don't have design responsibility, if the software requires you to do something you don't do, it falls apart immediately. And again, in that conversation, it was kind of interesting. The guy doing the demo said, well, just get the demo or get the DFMEA from your customer that's asking you. And the person laughed and said, I don't get DFMEAs from my customers. Are you kidding me? And the person next to him said, I can't even get DFMEAs out of my own company. So I'm just sharing with you some stories and examples about when people are trying to figure out how to do this, the challenges you're going to have. So I guess what I'm saying is what work depends on who you are. If you're designing, you need a PLM app. You need a complex, highly engineered app that does all that. If you're making parts, you probably don't like the highly engineered. And right now your goal is spreadsheets. So again, design and making part, that's really important to try to distinguish between APQP and designing new products and PPAP, verifying the manufacturing processes. So what would something like that look like? Something pretty basic, keep it simple, using a better document authoring tool. Something about execution, not just project management, not just oversight. I've got parts that have characteristics that are made through operations. The operation have process characteristics. Build a library around those where I can start building out process families. We're going to talk about that. That says this is the process, here's the risk, here's how we manage the risk. This appears to support and do things that makes it easier. And again, depending on the sophistication of your company, a baby step to a database-driven app like this that automotive requires is a great step. If you get bigger and you want to integrate with things, that's two. But so what would a better than spreadsheets but not too complex look like? Just silly things like spell checking. As quality professionals, we really get embarrassed if we send things out that have typos in it. And, well, John, you can do spell checking in Excel. Yeah, of course you can, as long as you remember. But real-time spell checking, smart searches across all your files, not just within a spreadsheet, filtering what rows can be seen, sorting columns, kind of just a way to navigate better. The idea of being able to, like in Excel, pin columns or hide columns. Some of these forms get pretty big depending on what version you're using and what format you're using. But these are the things that the people like in Excel that would like to keep. They want to get rid of the things they don't like. For example, broken links and that kind of capability. The right side of the FMEA, for those of you that aren't familiar with the PFMEA, the right side is where you put, hey, this is what we're going to do to either find problems better or reduce the severity of the problem or the probability of the problem happening. This is interesting because the right side of the form usually is not used. But the challenge is that's where all the real improvement comes. So we need to bring the right side of the FMEA to life. Well, how do you do that? Well, in spreadsheets, if I've got 50 part numbers and 50 spreadsheets, or maybe 100 with versions or 150, I can't keep track of all things. So again, when we go to databases instead of the spreadsheet, show me all the FMEA action items assigned to me. Show me everyone for this particular subject. Bring them all to one place that I can easily click on them. Another one was free versions. What I mean by that is, the databases now track any and all changes, who made them, what date and time, etc. And when we're trying to look at that, that is just way too much information for most people. I mean, if you're going to go through and do an audit or something within it, it might be worthwhile. But for most people, so what the users said, again, go out and talk to the people, is look, if I'm messing around with this thing, I'm just messing around with it. But as soon as we get our group or together that says, hey, this is good, let's freeze it, mark it as a release, and get all the information that we can publish. Another one, because it is a database, this is something that is not done in spreadsheets, and that was a consolidated view. A view where I can see all the fields in all the quote unquote forms or spreadsheets at one time. And once I see that, there's some cool things that you can do with it. The ability to hide things in them, not break linkages, but say I put something in the control plan for the operator, but it's really not a risk issue and it's not a new op in the process flow. A lot of control to see it. The other one is the configurable forms. I started to see this already in medical device. For some reason, companies think that they need to change the wording on the columns. We're not going to call it operation description function. We're going to call it process name. We're not going to call it that. We're going to call it this. It doesn't really matter. They're changing the columns of forms. The process of how you engage your people to define how you make it, to define the risk and how you're going to manage the risk is the same. So the ability to have a tool that lets you have a common way internally to teach it, and then if you want at the end, toggle it over to a customer specific form when you submit it to them. The other thing that I think is really important for the medical device industry to look at is the use of product and process families. And let's just focus on process families for now. I mentioned before the ability for most executives, most people in any company to go from receiving to shipping is why I'm emphasizing process families. There was a composite company we were doing some work with, and they said, well, look, we've got open molding, we've got closed molding, we've got polymer molding, but they could explain them all. Now, when they're going through these conversations, they're not talking about this part number, this rev level for this customer. They're just talking about their processes. And if you start with process families in the database, reusable process families, you can then get to the point where, it's a hand layup open mold using the compression molding on, something else. It just, everything flows and works better. The amount of work level goes down significantly. The problem with the PPAP process be driven by customer part number rev level is your organization doesn't think that way. That information comes in, but it doesn't have to do with the library to start. The other thing is, or this is just getting more into it, is once you get into even, the details, hand layup versus spray layup, they're almost all the same except for two steps. Hand layup, we apply fiber reinforcement. Spray up, we spray it. even within these processes, there's reusable information. Verifying a mold is the same as verifying a mold. Checking the spray gun is the same. So I'd strongly encourage your organizations to start the entire PPAP effort with process families. The other thing that we've done, and it's really helped a lot, is if you're going to have a common form internally for how you teach, train, and build usable, readable documents, we've gone in and changed the form headings. And I would kind of be negative on the customers doing it. But what I'm suggesting here is if you go out and talk to the operators and say, I would like to know about the operation description functionality of what you're working on, they're going to go, what? But you say, no, just describe your process. They will. If you ask them for, well, what are your control methods? They're going to, I don't know what you're talking about. But if you say, how do we keep this, keep these things from happening? What could go wrong? What would happen? How bad would it be if it happened? Why did it happen? Those are all conversations that operators are very comfortable with. When you start putting in front of them quality terms or PPAP terms or whatever, it just makes it more difficult. Let's put it that way. And the other one that's interesting, I've gone through thousands of PPAP submissions, even things like, sample size and sample frequency. Those get messed up. You say, well, how many of these do you do, a quantity, and how often do you do it? And then, of course, the last one, the reaction plan. What's your reaction plan? And what are you talking about? Well, if something bad goes wrong, what should you do if it happens? Then they can explain it to you. So I really believe it's important that, again, people, process, and the tools to help you. These are all some thoughts about how a deployment could go better, easier. Here's another interesting one. Some large companies not talking to the people doing the process, the knowledge engineering, the document authoring, talking to people kind of at the project management level, maybe a little higher. Well, it's got to have robust workflow. And again, if you talk to the people, the problem is, here's what you think it is, here's what it really is, and this is what it should be. If you start automating this before you understand the process, it becomes a real mess. So when we talk to the people doing it, they said, well, not really. You know what I need to make my job easier? I need a publish project button. And on that button, I can say, here's the documents that need to be submitted. I want you to send me the PDF files or the documents to submit them. I'll do that. I don't need the computer to do it. And then again, this is probably the one they like the best, the stuff assigned to me button, the actions button. With one click, go in. Now, again, keep in mind that you're probably working on multiple PPAP submissions to multiple customers, and some at same part number or different rev levels. So the ability to quickly go in and say, here's all the tasks assigned to you. The right side of the FMEA tasks that are assigned to you, where all the improvements done, it is, again, just a baby step beyond spreadsheets without all the robust, I got to define all the workflows and who does it. And if they're on vacation, do it this way. They said, look, just take a baby step and do it. As far as reportics and analytics, now we're getting up to the higher level in the organization. And of course, they want to do this, but it's really not impossible, but really difficult if I'm trying to do reporting against 100 standalone non-integrated spreadsheets. What are the top 10 issues across all our customers and part numbers that are the highest risk? What actions should we take on those? I mean, just a simple one. Are we getting better or are we getting worse at this thing? And again, that action item, what do I have to work on by due date? and even an RPN analysis, show me the risk across customers, across part numbers. Show me the risk across various operations. Show me common failure modes. Show me common causes. There's a whole pretty vast amount of reporting and analytics that now becomes possible that, manufacturing and quality engineers have been thinking in their head a lot. They just couldn't do it. One of the other things is, well, yeah, John, but, we're a small startup, we don't have the funds to do that. Just some quick comments on this. Remember, we're trying to solve the document authoring problem. This is much more than project management. Get finance and accounting involved. There's nothing like a recall or a failure that gets people's attention. That's what this is supposed to do. Operations, ask them if they have any shipping delays because the PPAP wasn't approved. They'll get you. Get engineering to work on new product introductions and purchase parts. And there's a whole nother white paper we published about if any of your companies are Lean or Six Sigma efforts, how this applies to the PPAP process. In general, it's a real mess. So recommended solution is solve the document authoring problem. Get rid of the databases, go to a database-driven tool set. And oh, by the way, I didn't talk about this one a lot, but as soon as we get out of these standalone, non-integrated spreadsheets that are downloaded, emailed, passed back and forth, you'll have much higher security and audit trail in a database-driven system. And again, the reporting analytics, things that just can't be done with the spreadsheets. A little bit about the Harrington Group. We've been in business since 1991. We have a robust enterprise quality management tool that can help in these. Our team focuses on effective quality management software that evolves as your business grows. In addition to the robust enterprise or HQMS system, we have a very powerful supplier portal that even further, you don't have to be $1 billion company to have a robust supplier portal. Harrington can help you with that.